Welcome. Welcome to MPAI 760 Unconventional Threats and Counterterrorism here at Georgetown's Applied Intelligence Program. Welcome to the course, and if there's one or two of you that are just coming into the program now, welcome to the program and welcome to Georgetown University. I'm Rohin Sharma, and I will be your instructor for the next 8 weeks. So welcome to the course, and for one or two of you, welcome to Georgetown University. What this course is not. This course is not counterterrorism. It's not hostage rescue. It's not force protection. It's not link analysis. It's not targeting. First, counterterrorism is not force protection. There's a whole new courses for that. And if you're in this program for some time now, you realize that intelligence or counterterrorism in general is not what you see in the movies or on premium TV shows. This course is a course in counterterrorism or terrorism and counterterrorism as a social and political phenomenon. We're going to look at history, we're going to look at philosophy, we're going to look at policy studies, and even a little bit of psychology in this course. We're going to look at, again, terrorism from a broad angle to try and get to the phenomenon of terrorism as well as the phenomenon of counterterrorism. Why does terrorism work? How does terrorism evolve? How do certain counterterrorism strategies work and while others are not? That's where we're going to look at in this course for the next 8 weeks. So I want you to start thinking about terrorism in that intellectual mindset. And hopefully, if you've been in this program for and taken several courses, you realize that intelligence is not as it's portrayed in the movies or on TV as well. So, starting off with the kind of the course layout. Again, this course is kind of in 4 parts. The first part is the current threat landscape. What this is kind of looking at how we got here to where we are now. We're going to look at terrorism, definitions of terrorism, and I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to look at history of terrorism. If you grew up during 9/11 and post 9/11 era, you might associate terrorism with Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Terrorism goes long before that, for the last 100 years, and we're going to look at the historical endpoints or the historical points of terrorism. And it's not to give you just a history lesson, but it's to give you kind of the patterns that you see in terrorism, whether you saw them 50 years ago, 100 years ago, are still relevant now. So what you see ISIS doing, how it's arisen and how it's fallen, you can trace back to all numerous groups that have occurred in the past. So despite what you see on cable TV or anything, ISIS is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for quite some time. We're going to look at counterterrorism policy. The current landscape. Again, we're looking at history, state sponsorship of terrorism. We're also going to look at CBRN terrorism, which is an area of expertise for me that's still relevant, or even just as relevant now as it was 20 years ago. We're going to look at counterterrorism policy, and this is looking at how the United States has reacted to 9/11 and has acted in the post 9/11 era. How our Homeland Security apparatus or intelligence apparatus has evolved and changed to deal with the threat, and we'll ask, is this worth it? Is the billions, trillions, depending on how you couch it, worth the investment made, and are we safer because of that? So that we're going to look at it from the United States perspective post 9/11. We're going to look at the current focus since really the rise of ISIS, and then we're going to look at comparative analysis. We're going to look at Israel, we're going to look at Britain, we're going to look at the EU to get lessons learned and see how other countries strategize on counterterrorism. Then we'll look at counterterrorism strategies. The best way to look at this is contemporary schisms, and this is 3 things: drones, drones, torture, and privacy. Those are the three things we're going to ask. Those issues that are impacting us right now. How do we determine drone targeting? How do we determine who gets, fortunately, killed in drones? How do we determine what level should we be, the National Security Agency should be monitoring our communications? And then we'll look at torture, for lack of a better term. Enhanced interrogation techniques. Are they worth it? Or are they not? And this gets a little fun because obviously good people can disagree on these issues. So I look forward to hearing about your schisms on these parts. And then you'll do a conclusion. We'll do a wrap up, and you'll do a final paper, which I'll discuss as we get a little bit closer to the paper. So work products. As you know, this is 16 weeks of courses of classes compressed into 8 weeks. So it's go, go, go. You're doing work all the time. Do not fall behind. It's something that's meant to be hard, meant to be challenging. So you have the weekly discussion section, and I'm looking here for just, I grade them pretty lightly as long as you fulfill the requirements and you analyze everyone's discussion points. So I want to be kind of clear on that. That this is it's meant to be free thinking in your writing. 5 short papers, about 500 to 800 words, and these papers are designed to be exactly how you would see it in the real world. The questions deal with issues of drone targeting or other policy relevant, drone targeting or legality of enhanced interrogation techniques. Basically policy relevant issues that if you were in the real world, you would get someone would come in your office and say, I heard about this in the news, write me 500 to 800 words, tell me what our policy is, and have it on my desk by the end of the day. That's what these short papers are meant to be. Short, concise papers that you would write if you were in the intelligence community or in the Homeland Security, law enforcement community that tries to answer a particular policy question. You have the midterm, again, 2,500 words, and we'll talk about that as we're getting close to the midterm. And then a final briefing, which is meant as if you're briefing Congress or senior Department of Defense official on a terrorist threat. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to the final. So starting off, again, week 1. The readings, you have, a lot of readings. You have the Inside Terrorism, Chapter 1, which defines terrorism. It is probably my most fascinating thought process on this. What is a terrorist? We have to get a good answer for what terrorism is, because we get to do things to terrorists that we don't get to do to other people. We don't get to predator drone drug traffickers. We don't get to do enhanced interrogation techniques on child molesters or human traffickers. There are certain things we get to do to terrorists that we don't get to do to other criminal activity. A certain world leader, when he was running for president, said he would kill the families of terrorists. Well, if you're going to do that, you have to define what terrorism is very succinctly and very cogently. So we're going to talk about that, and the example we give is Mandela, who was arrested for terrorism, but is now when he died, was a celebrated figure. So we'll ask from a legal, moral, and ethical perspective, what is terrorism? Then you'll talk about the 4 waves of terrorism, and a very succinct way of talking about terrorism from a historical perspective. And then the Miller and Crenshaw articles, which are they talk about history as well, but as you're going through those, try and link what they're saying about terrorism to the current issues that we're seeing in ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Discussion, what is a terrorist? And the second thing is, are terrorists ethical? Is basically what we're trying to answer. And you'll see in the readings, terrorists aren't as craven, even ISIS, even Al Qaeda, as much as you think. One of the complaints you get if you're in Iraq or Afghanistan is, the United States has rules of engagement while ISIS and Al Qaeda does not. That's wrong. ISIS and Al Qaeda have rules of engagement. They have limits on what they do, and we'll discuss that in the discussion section. And then the assignment, as I mentioned earlier, the assignment is going to be kind of lessons learned. Look at the history and try and determine, okay, are the historical case studies, are they relevant to, or what are the lessons learned to what we're seeing in ISIS and Al Qaeda now? So that's kind of week 1 in a nutshell. Welcome to the course, and I look forward to your points on the discussion board and meeting all of you.